Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, Jennifer and I are joined by a return guest, Tiffany Mazurek, who was on episode 5, which aired July 29th of 2021. So almost 2 years ago. Yay to us. Yay to us. Claps. And Tiffany is a holistic psychotherapist and body worker. And so today, the three of us are going to talk about conscious midlife, facing midlife with grace and just our eyes wide open.
I went online and read a bunch of articles about women and aging, and these are some of the things that came up. So the first question is, has aging been on your mind?
Yes, I will definitely say yes. And mainly because I went to visit family recently, seeing older relatives as they are getting on in years. Just it was like right there, like smack in the face. One way of aging. So yeah, so it's been definitely top of mind for me lately. Tiffany, what about you?
Tiffany?
When I was thinking about this today, I was like, for the most part, I don't worry about aging or haven't in the past, but that's not true. So I had to look for some pictures recently, the last few days, because I'm going on a retreat. And I started going through all these old pictures and really was reminded of all of the different things I've gone through in my life that made me very conscious of my age. So it wasn't necessarily about aging as in getting old and, and like aging out kind of thing. So one of the pictures I found was when I was going through fertility stuff. And I was like, oh, I remember saying often like, oh, I don't want to be 30 having my first kid. So obviously I was aware of aging, right? That we all only have so much time for fertility, all that great stuff. Yeah. So just sort of noticing. Then I got divorced at 40. It was, oh my God, I'm single at 40. Like, what does that mean? But then I would say my 40s, although they were the most difficult time, they were also like the biggest growth and some of the most wonderful times for me. I wasn't worried necessarily about aging. I was just kind of enjoying the independence and the power that was coming from 40s. When I turned 50, I'm 54 right now. The last 4 years have been a little challenging. I've had a lot of stuff come up around 50. I've had a lot of like fears and worries that I never had before. Just, yeah. Were you going to say something, Jennifer?
Yes, because the question I asked was, has aging been on your mind? And you specifically said, it hasn't been on my mind because I haven't been worrying about it. So you associated worry with aging in your mind, which is interesting.
So yes, aging has been on my mind.
What are the things at 54 that are new?
So I would say that I'm in a much better place right now as we talk than I've been in the last 4 years, which is pretty awesome due to different things I'm sure that will come up as we talk. So it's less fear-based now. But what happened for me is that a couple of years ago, I had a major move. I bought a house. I went back to living alone. And I think that brought up a lot of the, oh my gosh, I live all by myself. What if I fell down the stairs? Like just these things, right? That I had never thought about before. What if I fall down the stairs and I'm all by myself? What if I can't do stairs? And
Help,
I bought this.
I can't get up.
Yeah. And I bought this house that has stairs. And what if I can't do stairs? And what if I can't? I had a water issue this winter, a major house water issue. Yay, homeownership. I was up on a ladder in the winter, ladies, getting snow off my roof and like taping up this area to keep water from coming in my house and thinking in my head, I can't do this when I'm 60. And then I was like, you can do whatever you need to, like, just do it. You're not 60 right now. Just do what you got to do. So it's been on my mind.
What about you, Jennifer?
I think because I was taking care of my mom for the past several years, probably the biggest part of aging that has been on my mind is if I would follow in her footsteps. Like if I would start to have the signs of dementia, or if I would be able to take care of myself as I age. And then also I have had thoughts around, okay, I quit my job and in a year or so now, I'm probably going to need to get another job. And have I aged myself out of that kind of questions? Those kind of things come to mind for me. All right. Ready for number 2?
Sure.
I'm also 54. When I think of when I turned 54, I thought, okay, I'm starting the second half of my life. My brother says that half life was when we were in our 40s, and then anything after 70 is like a bonus. It's a gift. It's something to be celebrated. I think 50's half life, and I'm going to live to 100. What are both of your thoughts on that?
I have a hard time thinking of myself as being middle-aged. Not hard as in, oh my God, what the heck? Is that I just don't feel it. I'm 53 for people who don't know. I don't feel like what I thought 50s would be when I was a kid, right? Like I was watching the Golden Girls the other day with a friend of mine, and it just dawned on us that those characters were in their 50s and they painted them like little old ladies.
Yes.
And I'm like, wait a minute. We are
what?
in our their characters were in their 50s.
Those are some old ladies.
Right. And I'm like, wait a minute. Here we are in our early 50s, almost mid 50s, and I don't feel like a little old lady. I don't think anybody would ever look at any of us and think little old lady. Not that there's anything wrong with little old ladies. I mean, I like little old ladies. I hear the term middle-aged and I'm thinking, oh, that's somebody else.
Me too. I'm right there with you.
I still feel very vibrant and youthful. I don't think that necessarily has to change. I don't know if that really answers the
It does.
Yeah, same. I also, Jennifer, like you, when I hit 50, I was like, oh, okay, well, we're, about halfway. We got half more to go. So like, what happens this next half kind of thing? Like, I definitely just keep thinking like 100 or more, still moving, going strong, still feeling vital like I do now. Like, and I was in a group recently. I did an online course on basically like women aging. It was really awesome. That's part of why I'm in a really good place to have this conversation with you guys right now. And they talked too about the Golden Girls thing. And we were all like, it's insane that they portrayed. And the thing is that if I started noticing this when I turned 50, when I was in a bad place after 50, I started noticing in all the books when they were talking about women in their 50s, they really did portray them as like old and used up, and like it was really interesting. Oh, she looked lined and worn, like really using words like that in some of the books.
That's awful.
Yes, and it was very upsetting when you're already feeling vulnerable.
Right.
And then I would hear that and I'd be like, no, I'm not lined and worn. So yeah.
Right on. So we're all planning for like 100-ish, 110, something like that.
Sure.
We're around there.
Yeah. I mean, the women in my family tend to live a good long time. So
good.
There you go.
I had a psychic once tell me I was going to live a really long time too. So.
All right. You brought this up already, Tiffany, but all three of us are moving into midlife as single women. Maybe something that we hadn't planned for. What do you think about that?
This is a big one for me. I'll go first. This is a big one for me because this is one of those, my life is not what I planned, which is probably for a lot of people when they hit this part. But yes, going into midlife, being single and child, like not having had children, that was another thing that sort of hit me when I hit 50, was this feeling of, what am I supposed to want now? What's supposed to be my goal? Because in our younger years, right, we're supposed to look for family. We're supposed to want kids. We're supposed to want the job. I had everything I wanted except children, and that ship has probably sailed at this point, and I'm mostly at peace with that. Yeah, it's really strange to be. And I go back and forth between, where I'm at with what I do want right now or not, because my life's pretty great in lots of ways.
That's good to hear you say that your life is pretty great. I like that. What about you, Jennifer?
just like Tiffany, I go back and forth. Like one day I'm like, oh yeah, I'm single. It's awesome. I own my own home. I don't have a job anymore, but I used to toot that horn. I have my own job. I do this and that. And I'm like, okay, I'm good that way. And then the next day I'm like, I don't have a partner. I have to make all these decisions on my own. I have to fix my own roof and I fucking hate this, right? What I do know is that it would take something very special to, and it should anyway, right? Like, why didn't it take something very special in my 20s? But it should take something very special because I would be sacrificing a lot to get into a relationship, or at least that's the way I see it, because I haven't seen too many relationships where women aren't sacrificing a lot. So honestly, they don't look that appealing to me. And yet people are designed, or at least I think they are, to seek out relationships. And that could be friendships. That could be what we're doing here with the podcast. There's like part of me that's like, oh, I want that. I still want that. But then there's part of me that's maybe I don't. Maybe I don't anymore. What about you?
Well, I'm the only one in this group that has never been married.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, and I never wanted kids. So I never imagined my life as a mom. I mean, I have friends who have kids, and I have nephews and grandnieces and the whole thing, and I love them dearly. They're great. I think they're great kids, and they're growing into beautiful people. I never wanted that specifically in my life, but what I always did want was I always wanted to get married. I saw marriage as this, A, everybody was supposed to do it. B, it was, this great partnership, and it was supposed to be this fantastic thing. And then as I got older and seeing friends get divorced, I'm like, oh God, I don't really want that. And then, getting older still and seeing relationships that some were happy, some weren't, but none of them looked like what I wanted. If we were having this conversation, say 5 years ago, I would be like, oh my God, I can't imagine my life without being married. Like if I going into, looking into the future thinking I will never get married, I was torn up about it. I remember being in therapy and crying my eyes out about what if I never meet anybody, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, well, what if you don't? And I'm like, oh God, no. I want to be alone. Oh, nobody loves me. God, oh God. And trust me, it took a minute for this to turn, but I have people who love me, right? I mean, I do. There's lots of people in my life who love me. I have great friends and family. There is a lot of love in my life. But what I realize is I want romantic love. I want companionship. I want a lover. I mean, that's all. I always feel weird.
Yeah, I want a lover too. I'm right there with you.
I feel weird saying that word.
Bring on the lovers. Come on.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I
the
want
feminist
somebody
lovers
to share. Yes, exactly. Feminist, please. But I want somebody to share my life with, at least part of my life. But I don't want to turn over control to anybody. You know what I mean? Like I don't want, if it's not great, I don't want it. And if it's not right for me, then I don't want it. I think of what I do want and what I don't want, and I would rather be alone, or not in a relationship, but have lots of loving friends and family, instead of being in a crap relationship, because I've been through too many of those. Those were not good times in my life. I'm not willing to let go of what I have with having my independence and having a great life and being able to do what I want, travel when I want, see my friends when I want, and having all of this love surrounding me. I can't give that up for something that's not going to be complimentary and as good as what I currently have.
Two things came up for me in that. One is, why do we associate the relationship with giving up our control and power? Because we both said that. I don't think Tiffany did so much, but you and I both did.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, you said, I'm not willing. Do you both feel that that has changed since we were like in our 20s? Like in our 20s, we were willing to do a lot. And at 50, I'm not willing.
Yeah. I definitely do.
I think I had a lot of rules of how you were supposed to, right? Because I can remember it early in my marriage, really taking the very husband-wife role of who I thought I was supposed to be as a wife and how I thought marriage was supposed to be, and just kind of stepping into that picture that everybody put out there. And that picture is changing dramatically. I mean, I'll tell you, as a therapist, working with people in their 20s and 30s, it is changing. It really is.
Oh, good.
Which I'm happy to see. Yeah, I definitely had a lot of rules of, how I was supposed to be. And I think that shaped a lot of that feeling I had of giving up my power.
And I think every time we kind of talk about marriage in that context, as feminist women, we sort of see it as giving up our power when it doesn't really need to be.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So I'm going to jump to one of the last questions, because what you both said about motherhood or non-motherhood really speaks to this next question. So we'll just jump up there. So Gloria Steinem said, in a general way, women became more radical as they get older. The pattern is that women are conservative when they are young. That's when there is more pressure on us to conform, when we are potential child bearers and sex objects. And we lose power when we get older, which is a very radicalizing experience. So, Gloria Steinem, master feminist, talks about we lose power, but that makes us radical. What do you think?
We talked about this in the group I was just in.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Huh, very cool.
Yeah. And we definitely talked about the feeling for many of us of when you can come to some sort of comfort or let go of the need for the male gaze, and to be that we were all sort of owning our own sexuality in a different way at this stage in life. And it wasn't about, let me be sexy for men. It was more about like an internal, how did it feel for us? How did we want to feel for ourselves in our own bodies at this time? And that when you're letting go of that, and the fertility thing, right? Like when you're hitting perimenopause, when you're hitting menopause, when it's no longer about needing to fulfill biologically, but also emotionally that need to have kids, that really changes things. And that there is almost a relief of like, that's not running me anymore. My energy can go elsewhere.
But do you feel like as young women, maybe we were socialized that our power was in our ability to have children and as sexual objects?
I do agree with that, but I never felt that. Because first off, because I didn't want kids. And second, because I never really saw myself necessarily as a non-sexual being, but I felt like I didn't really trade on my looks, partly because I didn't think I was pretty. So I didn't feel like I traded on my looks. I didn't feel like I was pretty, so I didn't feel like that was an issue. And I was very outspoken as a younger woman, in my teens, in my 20s, very, very outspoken. I did go through a phase where I would change myself to make a guy like me. I felt like I wasn't what guys wanted. So in order to make a particular guy like me, I had to change to fit what I thought he wanted. But
what did he want? What did the guys want?
Not me.
Exactly. How were you changing yourself?
I was trying to be the not serious girl, the not not too needy, the not radical girl, not too needy, not argumentative, not smarter than the guy, basically changing me, right? Trying
Right.
to be the girl who is just,
Attractive to
easy
a
to be
man.
around. Yeah, just easy to be around.
I think that's the point.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, you just summarized exactly what Gloria Steinem was talking
Yeah.
about.
I
Okay.
think that's the point, is that
Yeah.
we somehow dim the things within us that we think are unattractive. We may be right or wrong about that. We might not even be right, but we assume that a man is finding certain characteristics attractive and certain other characteristics unattractive. So we turn off parts of ourselves
Right.
and amplify the parts that were for the male gaze.
Yeah. But I don't feel like I did that constantly. I only
Okay,
did
good.
it, like
You only did it to hook that man.
I know. And well, I was dateless for most of the time. I used to call myself literally the dateless wonder for decades. I got into my 30s and I feel like I just shut everything down. And maybe you guys have heard the phrase, I hid my light under a bushel. Yes, I did. In 24/7. Like I was like, oh, well, I shouldn't be so loud and I shouldn't be so
But
vocal and
that's
I shouldn't be
exactly
so
what we're
conservative.
talking about. We did that too.
And even if you weren't specifically doing it for a man, you were still doing it right, like as a woman.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, that's like,
and that's what she's saying. So Gloria's saying in our young years, we have our fertility. That's what we offer to society as our strength and our sexiness, however that translates, why a man wants us, right?
Yeah.
Why a man wants us. And then we hit this age where those two things no longer matter anymore. We're not going to bear children. And we've been far surpassed by our younger females as the sexual object of desire, right?
Right.
So here we are. Now what happens?
The majority of my marriage, I spent supporting him in his goals. He was very goal driven. He constantly had a 1 year, a 5 year, a 10-year plan. And most of my energy went to supporting him in achieving his goals. So that when we were splitting, after we split up, there was a little bit of, I don't even know what I want. I don't even know what Tiffany wants out of life at that point. And that was really dysregulating for a while. To be at this stage in my life now of like figuring it out for me, but really just for me, it's pretty great.
So have you started to figure it out for you? What you want?
Yes, it's still in progress, but yes.
Well, and it can be in progress for a while, right? Like if you decide on something now, you can always change that later, right? I mean, isn't that part of the freedom of getting older?
And I don't know about for the two of you, but for me, there is a freedom in, I don't have to worry about all those other things. Like there's not a timeline right now, right? Like I don't feel like there's a timeline of, so for example, when I said, right, I didn't want to be 30 having my first kid. In my mind, my timeline was I must have my first baby before I'm 30 kind of thing. I must have this before this age. I must have this before this age. And I don't feel any of that at this point. I just feel sort of like, oh, I want to travel and I want to do this and I want to do that. And I'm sort of like, cool. As it unfolds, it will happen.
So we just have to get it done before we're dead now. Any goal is before death. Which brings on the next topic, death of parents. We've all experienced some of that. And I feel like at death of parents and hitting 50-ish, 53, 54, it brings on our own mortality. Right. And we just said we don't have a timeline, but do we have a timeline? Not to freak you out, Tiffany, with the timeline. I'm not trying to put a timeline back in there.
It's okay.
What do you all think about that?
You should start.
Okay, I'll share something with you both that I haven't shared publicly yet. Last night I had a dream. I had this dream that my dad and his girlfriend were living in the apartment that I half-time grew up in because that's where my dad lived. And they were moving. And they were packing all their stuff. And my little brother and I were there helping. And I was getting really mad or maybe even sad, because I realized they were moving so far away that I was never going to see them again. And I was getting really, really torn up. And I woke up and I was sobbing. I was like wide awake. And it was clear as day that it was a dream about my father's death, that he, like my mother, is aging, and I hope he lives another 20 years, but I don't know. Eventually he will pass. And this dream was about that. Then I sat down and I wrote him a long letter today. I sat down and told him about the dream. And I said, I know people don't like to talk about death, but I want to tell you all of these things are important to me before that happens for you. But what it made me think about in my own mortality is I'm not really afraid of death, which is weird because I can never decide if I believe in the afterlife or don't believe in the afterlife. But, you know, Tiffany and I joke about this a lot. I always say this is my last lifetime because I don't want to do this again, because like, that's a very depressive thought. And I'm not a depressed person, but I really don't want to do this again. When it is over, I think I will have a sense of relief. But what I do feel is FOMO, which is fear of missing out. Like all that stuff that my kids will do when I am not here to see it. Maybe, hopefully I'll be like in the ether realm, like watching what they're doing, but I do have FOMO. And I also know how painful this process of my mother's death was for me. And I feel bad that my children will also feel that. So that's what I think of, which I know is a little out there, right? I get it.
When my dad died, I was only in my 30s. So
You were very young.
It didn't hit any mortality for me. It was just such a shock, right? To be that young and not have a dad. When my mom died a couple of years ago, again, I don't think it's hit any like mortality things for me. It was more of this weird floaty feeling of like, I'm not any, I know this isn't true, but I'm not anybody's daughter anymore. You know what I mean? Like I remember kind of half joking with my brother as we were doing some of the preparation after she died and being like, we're orphans now. And you kind of make those morbid jokes, but it does feel really unmooring to lose both your parents. The other thing is a lot of questions that have come up for me that I'm like, I can't ask them now.
Yeah.
Or being at this maturity level where I think about conversations I wish I could have had with my dad. I was too young in my 30s to have those conversations. I wasn't mature enough to have those conversations, but man, I would have loved to have those conversations. So that's mostly.
When my dad died, in a lot of ways, I felt like it was maybe a non-issue because and that's going to make me sound like an asshole. My parents' divorce was very contentious, and I didn't grow up with my dad being involved. Once our parents split up, my dad was no longer in the picture. I mean, we visited like maybe once or twice after that. Before my dad's funeral, the last time I laid eyes on him, I believe I was 7 years old, maybe 6. His lack of presence was a presence more than he was, right? I was very surprised by the fact that I cried when my brother called to tell me that our dad had died. And I realized that I was crying because the possibility that he might change and then be a dad, that's what I was grieving. I wasn't grieving him because I only knew him as an absence and as an unpleasant person. And then growing up, I went through phases where I would have a recurring soul-shaking dream about my mom dying. And so I was very, very, very frightened of losing my mom. The dreams don't happen anymore, but my mom is getting older. My mom is 84. Her personality is still big and vibrant, but physically, she is aging, which I know happens to everybody, but she's not necessarily aging gracefully in her physicality. That scares me. It's that sort of loss of ability to do things. In some ways, getting older and losing my independence maybe scares me more than death. And I don't think I would have said that earlier in my life. I don't know if I necessarily believe in heaven, but for some reason I do believe in hell, maybe because it scares me. And so
I think you gotta have both.
Yeah, I don't want to go to hell because I have these like horrible, like fire and brimstone kind of images of hell, and I definitely don't want to be there. I also have this feeling that when someone dies, their energy is still around. And so you don't necessarily lose them because their love is still, you can still feel the love that you had for them. I don't think that goes away. Am I afraid of death? I don't know. I don't know if I am. I'm more afraid of getting older and not having the ability to live my life the way that I want to live it.
Perfect segue. So we started off talking about conscious aging, right? That was the term, conscious aging. What does it mean?
I think being able to live life on your terms, being able to still have independence, still having some control over your body and your mind.
For me, it's maintaining balance physically, mentally, spiritually, like all of that stuff. It's being aware of when I went through what I would say would be just a mild depression after 50. I mean, granted, we were also going through COVID. So we had COVID in there as well. There was a
lot going on.
There was a lot happening.
Exactly. Just a little thing called COVID.
Exactly. But when I did hit that depression, and as I came out and have been doing better and better over this past year, being aware of, I really want to consciously stay aware of this. Of course, I want to do therapy. I'm a therapist, right? I believe in all that kind of stuff, but it's more than that. It's about who I'm connecting with, the connections I'm making, the groups I'm with. I have always had friends of all ages. So I have had older friends, I've had younger friends, and I have watched some of my older friends do the typical thing where they move to Florida and get less active because it's too hot. And even though they moved there to be active, but do all of the complaining, right? And say the things like aging isn't for the weak and all those things. I had a lot of fear about that, like a lot of resistance to, oh my God, that's not my reality. And then being in this group that I was in was so amazing because we did have an entire session where we all got to talk about our fears, and it was great. And we did it in a very positive way. And it was very uplifting and empowering, not in that way of you get together with people and like I have observed, I remember going on a trip to Florida to visit friends, sitting at dinner with all of these people who were probably a good 10 years older than myself. So this would have been when I was in my 40s, but listening to all of them lament all of their physical issues, all of the problems they were going. That was the entire conversation. And going back to my friend's house afterwards and saying to them, you are not allowed to age that way. And pointing out to them and them saying, yeah, we do notice that happens every time we all get together. I was like, no, that cannot be good for you. And so that's part of my conscious thing is being around people like the two of you and, having those people in my life who are in my age range. I don't just have to hang out with the younger people to try to, because that's the other thing. I'm not trying to keep up with the younger people anymore. Mm-hmm. I would say in my 40s, I probably was trying a little bit because I was kind of like, yeah, I'm still a badass. I can still, I think now I'm in the place of, I love being around the younger people because it gives me this wonderful energy. And I like being the kind of like elder, smart, wise person, but I don't have to keep up with you. But I also want a group of vivacious, like lively people my age who are also doing this in a conscious way. It's very much about being aware of my, physical health and what do I need to do for that? And how can I do that in a balanced way? That's been a big part of my journey too, is, the body image stuff that you guys, I know you guys have talked about this on podcasts and I've heard you guys have these conversations. So yep, right there with you. I've gone through all of those kinds of things too. And yeah, so just looking at all aspects of my life, right? How do I stay engaged? How do I stay connected? How do I stay all the things healthy, all the things I need to do? I work from home now, so I don't see people a lot during the week, unless I consciously make sure I have those connections. So I've also been working on that as well. So
yeah,
So do you
same. I
stay
work from home
home?
now too. So
Do you both stay home all day long?
some days,
yeah, for the most
yes.
part, I have to make a conscious effort to leave my apartment at some point. I think one of the things that I've learned from living with depression is I have to stay ever mindful of how I'm doing mentally. If I feel that I'm starting to kind of chase my tail, I make myself go outside, or I make myself sit on my balcony, or I make myself like text somebody and say like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Let's make a plan," or go to the grocery store or something. Like I have to do something so that I stop chasing my tail. I think had I not learned that particular skill, working from home would probably be really hard for me.
Gloria Steinem, in that quote we read, talked about the power of the 20s and then losing that power. But then what did she say? It was reborn into radicalizing experience. We're all just at the apex of this transition. But number one, do you feel a new power? And if so, what does that power feel like?
In my group, they called it postmenopausal zest.
Love that
Postmenopausal
phrase.
zest.
And she had, and I won't be able to remember them offhand, but there were several stages you go through perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, right? But they talked about how when you're kind of postmenopause, there's a new availability of creativity because your body's not doing all that stuff it had to do. I mean, we all know there's still some stuff that's happening. There's still there's still some fluctuations that are happening that you have to figure out. But things have shifted to a different place. And so, yeah, postmenopausal zest. I absolutely am feeling that. I feel like I have this creativity that I'm trying to figure out an outlet for. I have ideas. I have things I want to do. Yeah, I definitely feel that power returning.
What about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, crazy amounts of power, actually. I think it comes from the hormonal changes of menopause, for sure. I still don't even really know if I'm in menopause or not because I had the hysterectomy, and it's really hard to know that because I still have ovaries and I can still feel them ovulating. I'm in kind of a weird position with that, but I do feel, and this is probably because I did quit my job, which I keep saying, I feel like I'm bragging. I quit my job. I do feel like
brag all you want.
That has opened up enough time and space to do like not just conscious aging, but conscious living. I think what's really changed for me is I'm doing that in regards to my diet. I'm doing that in regards to my exercise. I'm doing that and because I don't have a job, every single day is like, what do I feel like doing today? And even today, I had a kind of a plan in my mind. But in the middle of the day, I was like, I must write this letter to my father. I must do it now while it's all in my head. And so even though I was supposed to be preparing for this, I sat down and wrote it. And I said, the podcast will take care of itself. And I wrote it because that is what I was called to do at that moment in time. And I feel that. I feel the callings to do things. Like a story will come to me. I'll go write it down. Or I'll say, oh, now's the time for a walk. Or some days, hopefully I'll feel like running again, those kind of things. I feel that power, that intuitive power coming through. And like you said, Tiffany, lots of creativity.
What I feel is both a calming and settling as well. It's like completely opposite, as well as this welling up of like new creativity and energy. So it's really interesting to be, because I'm doing a lot of exactly what you say. I haven't quit my job, but I'm doing exactly what you're doing also, Jennifer, of the consciously thinking about my diet, consciously thinking about my exercise, consciously thinking, like just being really aware of what does my body need today? What does my mind need today? What do I, and so yes, I have a job in there that has to happen, but in the other time, really being aware of what it is that I want to spend my time doing. Maybe that's the shift, right? Is that because time is so precious at this point that we're really more thoughtful about it.
No time for bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's part of, we've talked about this before with dating, right? Is that
No time for that bullshit.
Yeah.
Who wants to waste time with people that we don't want to spend time with?
A bad date.
yeah.
Sitting on the couch, watching someone take the TV tuner and flick between channels. I've had so many dates like that. I am not doing that anymore. Oh, Raquel.
No.
Time's way too precious now for that.
Run out of fucks to give.
That's
For sure.
That's the power. We've run out of fucks to give. Yeah.
That exact phrase was said so many times in the group I went through. So yes, exactly.
Exactly what you guys are saying. Being more mindful about what I'm doing, the way that I work out. Okay, let me not try to kill myself the way that I did in the 20s. Maybe I'll get back there, but let me not try to get back there in 20 minutes. Like, that's crazy. Let me ease into it, right? And really telling myself, ease into it. It's all right. It's all right. Just ease into it. You don't have to be back there yet. Just ease into it. Thinking about what I eat. Trying to think of it as feeding my body as opposed to either emotional eating or restricting stuff. Like, what feels good for me to eat right now? If I want to eat a plate of fruit, that sounds really awesome sometimes, and I'm just going to eat like that. Just feels great, right? Or if I want to go have like a bunch of roasted vegetables, that sounds great too, right? Like, thinking about what
I think
feels
a plate
good
of cake sounds good.
Well,
Sometimes.
sure, but thinking about what feels good in my body, thinking about what I've learned along the way, like how to pay attention to what's going on in my head so that I can recalibrate where necessary, right? Because in my 30s, didn't necessarily have those skills. For the skills that I did have, wasn't exactly using them. I've got more practice in using those, and I just feel more comfortable in my personality, in who I am. I'm not really interested in dumbing any of that down for anybody anymore. There's this power that lies in that of, I'm just me, and being me is pretty awesome. I'm not going to dumb that down for anybody. I am fully and 100% me. My goofy side, my serious side, the radical side. I mean, there's all of these things that make up me. It's all pretty good. Like, I'm good with it. In my 20s, I was trying to shut some of that out because I didn't think people would like it. Well, at the ripe old age of 53, there's plenty of people who've liked it. Lots of people who love me. I try to sit in that more than in the insecurities that seem to rule my life in my 20s and 30s.
Yep.
So I feel more sure of myself, I think.
The second part of the question is, now that you feel that power and the creativity and everything's growing, the conscious aging, what is your vision for the second half of your life? Have you thought about that?
Tell you about this great exercise we did.
Yeah, tell us.
Yes.
She had us make a Pinterest board, an aging Pinterest board. And so we would put images of women who had this lovely, long, flowing, gray hair, or whatever your style, right, was. But like us, maybe the style and the way they dressed, maybe it was words and memes and whatever. But it was so much fun to do that. And that was when I sort of like, there was a changeover for me of, oh, right, like I can take power in this process and how this goes. And so I highly recommend it if you have Pinterest to do it. It's really fun when you start searching the words. And so that was how we did it. You've thought of words you wanted. So we sat down and each of us made a list of the words of our vision of aging, right? So for me, it was things like vitality and empowered and, things like that. And then when you put those in, you saw what came up. And then it was pretty great. So mine was called Aging Like a Badass.
Love that.
Awesome.
And it had some famous women who I really admire the way that they're aging, and then some just random people. But
Who are some of the famous women that you picked?
let's see. I had Andy McDowell and Jane Fonda, and oh shoot, I just went totally blank. This is menopause brain. Those are the two I can remember right away. But yes, it was really cool to go through and do that. And so for me, my vision is being active and traveling. I've been doing this past year, I've been doing a lot. Like I had a lot of unexpected travel come up, and I'm about to take a trip next week. And then October, I'm going to be taking a trip. Yeah. So traveling, connecting with people I love, spending time. I moved a couple of years ago, and so I haven't quite found my group of friends here, but I've been finding new ways to make sure that I'm connecting to the friends I do have, even if they're not local. And then also, I have my nieces who just turned 7, and, spending time with them as much as I can. And my other wonderful niece who's 27 now, being with the people I love, enjoying that time, feeling connected, loving my work in a new way, hitting a new phase of being able to, I don't love this word, but I'm just going to I guess maybe that's maybe I'm having an old trigger to it, but being the elder, right? Like being the wise woman.
Wise woman sounds better than wise elder, I think.
I like it too. So
wise,
being the wise woman, right? Who can just, be with all these really amazing people. So
I see my future definitely continuing to do this, doing the podcast for sure, because this brings me a joy that very few other things in my life have brought to me. So definitely doing this, continuing to have the great conversations and continuing to meet amazing women. Amazing people. So that definitely continuing with that. Traveling more for sure, maintaining my physicality and my energy so that I can travel the way that I want to and enjoy travel the way that I want to. So I can walk for hours and do a hike or whatever, like all the things, I still want to be able to do all those things. Having a sense of not taking on other people's bullshit, like not, not taking on somebody's angry ass, whatever, dysregulated emotion. Just go, you know what, you're having whatever you're dealing with, but that doesn't have to be on my plate. Like I'm human and it'll affect me for a minute, but I don't have to take that on.
Nope.
I can still go and enjoy my day and have a good time and live my life and explore things I want to continue to explore and learn and do and all the things, but I don't have to take on somebody else's bullshit. I think that's the biggest one for me.
That one is awesome.
Beautiful.
I don't want any more bullshit either. So probably a month or so before my mom died, I was running and listening to one of Oprah's podcasts, and she was interviewing an author, and sadly, I don't remember who. They were talking about how do you know what your life's purpose is? And his whole premise was you can just ask that question and it will come to you. And he said, I asked that question and the universe told me I was a writer and therefore I'm a writer. And I thought, oh, this is a piece of cake. I'm going to ask this question and I'm also going to be a writer. So I'm running along and I'm like, all right, universe, what is my life purpose? And I'm waiting for writer to come, but instead I hear matriarch. And then I was like, oh, that makes total sense because my mom was the matriarch of the family. She did her job well. And I realized that passed to me. And I already do a lot of that anyway. I already take very good care of my family. But it also ties into what you were saying, Tiffany, about the level of the relationship, being with the people that I love, but on such a deeper level. Raquel, you and I have talked about this a lot. Actually, you and I, Tiffany, also. In the dating world, when we've gone out, one of the things we've been most disappointed is the dates we've had, they haven't asked us any questions.
Yes.
But I've taken that further. I'm like, okay, who are these people that are in our lives? What kind of relationship are we having with them? For me, it's my children, my sister's children, people I come into contact with, my friends, you guys. What kind of questions are we asking each other? Are we trying to learn to get to know each other deeper than we ever have before? Or are we having relationships that are on the surface? And I don't want surface relationships anymore. I want deep, meaningful conversations. And shit, I want sex too, but I will just go for the deep, meaningful conversations. I think I can add both. I still see that as a possibility. I think when I look at the second half of my life, I see matriarch, and then I see so many possibilities stemming from it, different things that I could do. So yeah, that's what I see.
Possibilities. That is huge. I have to put that out there. We all, I think, are seeing the second half of our lives with possibilities. And I think that is a change from generations before us. They saw the second half of their life as, I'm done.
Girls?
Yeah, well, yeah, or as not even as Golden Girls, because they were pretty active and out there doing stuff. But I literally think generations before us, the second half of their life was, I don't earn anymore. I don't do anymore. I don't have a purpose anymore. That part's done. We see possibilities in the second half of our lives. And I think that is fucking fabulous. And I think we all deserve a huge pat on the back for that. I think that there's other people in our age group who maybe don't see it that way. I think the shift is happening it's happening in our generation for sure, in our age group. And then people younger than us, I think they're probably like, of course there's possibilities. Why does that have to stop?
I think it's like Tiffany said, when she was having dinner with the people who were like 15 years older than her, and their conversation focused around their ailments and the things that they couldn't do rather than the things they could do. I think the language and who you're surrounding yourself with and the discussions that you're having. We're seeing people in their 40s saying, oh, I'm aging. My body hurts. There's nothing I can do. You can live like that if you want to. There are going to be things in our bodies that change. That's a reality. I had more questions, but we're running out of time. So I'll end it with one. A lot of people say that when women get to be our age through menopause, that we become invisible. Do you see yourselves as invisible? And what does that mean to you? And then if you do, what's your plan to not be invisible?
I don't feel invisible at all. Fuck that. I definitely do not. As loud as I am, I can't imagine I would ever be invisible because I don't see that changing. I don't see me getting quieter. If being invisible equals being invisible to the male gaze, again, fuck that. Regardless of how old I am, if a man can't see me because of my age, that's not a man I want. I think I just have to say fuck that.
This is a good question because honestly, this was one of my fears about aging, was becoming invisible. One of my biggest fears. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be that old lady that nobody even notices, who's walking through the grocery store all by herself. I don't feel that way at all. I don't feel like that at all. And I don't plan to feel like that at all. And I think the plan is exactly what we already talked about. Staying active, staying engaged, staying alert. I've noticed there's a lot of times people like to talk to me, like strangers like to talk to me all the time. I don't know what that is. And so
you're a therapist. They're like drawn right in.
You're welcoming. You're very welcoming.
And so that's how, that's been happening a lot recently. And I was like, okay, this is probably the universe being like, you're not going to be invisible. And that's okay. I also have a desire to be more of an activist. I have a lot of respect for Jennifer, all the stuff that you do. And I really have been drawn to that. And I think my energy had to go into the move and sort of acclimating and then a little bit of the depression stuff. And so now that I'm sort of feeling that zest coming on, I definitely want to figure out where that comes also, like how to use that energy as well. And then I have other plans. Like I mean, like I said, I have this creativity that's there's some sort of online group or something that I'm going to do. I just can't figure out what it's going to center around yet. And so that's what I'm putting out there in the universe, is like, bring me the course so I can put it together and do it.
I have some mixed feelings about this question, which is one of the
Okay.
reasons why I wanted to ask it, because I feel like as women, and I can only speak for myself, but I have spent a large portion of my life trying to remain attractive. A lot of it was losing weight, but it wasn't all losing weight. It was like having the right haircut or the right clothes, or the whole capitalism bullshit about we're not enough, so buy this, buy that, whatever.
Yep.
That being said, I think that could easily continue into life. Like at 50, there are so many products that I've noticed that are like directly targeted towards us. Like,
Yep.
color your hair, put some stuff on your skin. I'm not interested in those commercials anymore. Most of the time, because I don't watch a lot of TV, the only where I see those ads is on Facebook or Instagram or something like that. And I've come into the habit of actually deleting them. And they'll ask
good.
why, and I'll say, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to me. It's irrelevant. And I think the process of doing that, it's become irrelevant. That being said, all of that is behind me in a way. I do still question my attractiveness. There's not a, Raquel makes that face, says the person who said she never thought she was pretty. Okay, we all have it, right?
We do. I know.
I do question it. And I travel with young girls, and that is different than the two of you. And there was a time period, and it happened a lot sooner than it should have, where the gaze stopped going to me and it started going to them. And this is not a jealousy thing. In matter of fact, when that was happening early on, it was, I'm fucking pissed off mother thing. Stop looking at my kid like that. But there is some truth to that. So I'm highly aware of that. At the same point, I think I want to ask you guys one more question, and I'll answer it right now for myself. Because all of this is tied together at 50, okay, we have no more shits to give about this, but we still want to be attractive, right? We're not throwing it all in. No more shits to give. But what would you tell your 20 something? Well, my kids are 20 something. One of them is, and my niece is 20 something. And I see them spraying perfume and all sorts of scents because they got to smell a certain way. And it's probably full of endocrine disruptors, actually, is what I want to tell them. I'm like, stop putting that stuff on yourself. And they're going to the mall to get Victoria's Secret underwear because they're sexier or better, and I want to be like, none of it is going to make you happy. None of it is going to make you powerful. Whether it's for the male gaze or whether it's for yourself, it's this huge consumerism culture that we're tied to that tells us we're not enough. And as long as we believe that one more thing is going to make us enough, we're never going to get there. The only thing that makes us enough is when we decide for ourselves, we go internal and we decide we're enough. I don't know. I just talked in a big circle, but that is what I would tell my 20 something. And that's the power of the 50-year-old, I think.
Yeah.
As I finally at 50, and God damn it, if it didn't take this long, I finally at 50 feel like I'm enough. Yeah. And then some days I don't, but most days I do.
There's a couple things I would tell my 20-something-year-old self, but the first would be you're enough. When I was going through pictures this week, I remember pulling out a few and thinking, I thought I was fat.
Yeah.
I thought I wasn't as attractive as my friends. And I just look at those pictures and I'm like, you were beautiful. And look at how small you were. And it doesn't, not that all that matters, but it's like, I want to tell all these women now, right? These young women, like, you're going to look back at yourself and realize you wasted so much time caring about those things.
We wasted our time thinking about those things.
It's precious energy that we waste on that, it's never
so much.
I think I would tell my 20-something-year-old self that definitely that I was enough, but also all of the things that I thought took away from me or that I thought were too much, like my laugh being too loud, or me being a goofball, or me not looking like everybody else. All of that shit is great. All of that is what makes me me. That all of that is what people like about me. My laugh and my energy and my personality and me being a goofball. And I would tell myself to own all of that so much earlier in life and just live in it, just revel in it, just to feel like anybody who doesn't like it, anybody who doesn't get it, those weren't the people that were going to be here in my 50s. Quit worrying about those people. Quit trying to make myself fit everybody else. Just be me. The people will come. The people who are drawn to me as I am will come. I don't have to change myself for the people to show up.
Any final thoughts, things that we didn't talk about that either of you think are really important for women navigating this time in their life?
Well, I would say, I mean, as a therapist, like if you're struggling, talk to other women or go to a therapist, but like we should do that anyways. But like talk to other people. That was what was the turning point for me. I think part of my struggle was this happened during COVID, and then it happened after my move. I had another drop, in my mood. And so both times I felt kind of isolated. And once I started connecting with others and having these conversations, podcasts helped a lot. There's a lot more women talking about this on podcasts right now. So that was awesome. Just connecting with other people who are going through the same thing and just having those conversations is huge.
Yeah, I actually want to list these top 10 tips that I found. I just want to put these out there as a succinct blurb for people who want that. 1, get regular exercise. 2, be sure to visit the doctor, therapist, doctor, whatever you need. 3, sleep 7 to 9 hours each night. 4, keep a positive mindset. 5, stay connected to your loved ones. 6, learn something new. 7, eat a balanced, healthy diet. 8, do what you love to do. 9, prioritize both mental and physical health. 10, enjoy the moment. We talked about all those things in one way or another.
That's part of the power of the aging too, don't you think? Is that it's easier to enjoy the moment?
Absolutely.
You don't have all of those other conflicting things pulling at your energy of who you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to be achieving, what you're supposed to be going after. You can just be and enjoy where you are and who you're with. One of the things that just stuck out to me is different when we were talking about like what might have been different with our parents versus us. I feel like the generations were very much about when you hit retirement, you got to do all those things. So they put off all of this stuff, self-care, growth for themselves, traveling, all those things for retirement. My dad didn't make it to retirement. But also, how many moments did they miss when they were just waiting to get to retirement? That's the other thing I'm seeing more of is people being like, no, actually, I want to enjoy this time right now. Don't wait till retirement.
What about you, Jennifer?
Final thoughts? Well, I just had like 1,000 more thoughts from everything you both said. When you said that, to put an emphasis on going to your medical appointments from your list, that's something I've been taking very seriously lately, because one of the things I noticed with my mom is that she didn't really see her doctors. When she did start getting symptoms of dementia and Alzheimer's, there were no baselines to go from. I like having the annual reports to look at to see if my baselines are the same. I think that has been really important for me.
Awesome. This has been a great discussion. I'm glad we talked about this.
Any final things anyone wants to say?
Thank you for doing this, all of it. When you said it's been almost 2 years since I've been on it, I was like, it's been almost 2 years since you started this. And I remember both of you starting this and how exciting and the great conversations you've been able to have. And thank you for being part of this because, Glennon Doyle has had these conversations on her podcast. And I've heard a couple other podcasts where they're talking about it. Oprah's got some sort of masterclass thing she's doing right now, but I'm like, okay, good. At least we're starting to have more of these conversations and it needs to be seen.
Yeah.
And thanks for inviting me.
Of course. Thanks for coming back. I love that we had this conversation today and that we are continuing to have conversations of this type. Have the conversations. Conscious aging. There's hope and possibility in aging. Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.